What's the best everyday carry knife on the market right now that you can buy right now? It's the Benchmade 556/1 Mini Griptillian new for 2016. Let's talk about why. The Mini Griptillian range and the Griptillian range is one of the longest standing Benchmade knife company knives. The Mini Grip is put into that category of classic everyday carry knives for pure everyday carry due to its 3-inch or less blade, its comfortable handle and its relative inexpensiveness compared to other knives in its class. This is somewhat of a pimped out or upgraded version. The original Mini Griptillian was a knife of these pretty much same dimensions, just made out of 154 cm steel and a nylon or sort of Grivery type handle. They've always had the same locking mechanism, the Benchmade axis lock. They've had thumb stud and spider hole or thumb hole type entries. They've always had different blade shapes, blade colours. Benchmade have gone so far even to make a custom Mini Grip and Griptillian line where you can go into their site, pick out different scale colours, pick out different blade shapes, that sort of thing. These new ones, however, are something of an update, catching back up with what's the current technology, especially in steel, and also in what the consumers have long voiced that they wanted in handle materials. Let's talk about the knife bit by bit and break it down. The blade on my Benchmade Mini Griptillian 556/1 is the drop point style. So it's a very, very steep drop point, slight swedge on the end there, and it's got a sabre grind which meets up to the flat grind here. So the blade is 3 inches long, which is often acknowledged to be the best sort of everyday carry blade length because it's not too big to draw attention, so the right size to manage most tasks without being too small, and it makes for a knife that's generally pretty appealing to have in your pocket. 3-inch blade, nice plain edge. Benchmade do versions of the original Griptillian with a partially serrated edge, and they do some different blade shapes. I think this is probably the better one to go with because you do get a very highly workable tip as opposed to the somewhat Santoku edge of the often the one with the opening hole has. The steel that this blade is made of is called CPM 20CV. That steel is a powder steel, and it is very similar chemical equation to make it as to make M390, which is a steel made by Bowler. I'm aware that Crucible may even have bought the rights to make the steel and just called it a different name and changed a couple of the elements, a couple of the percentages, but in reality it is definitely performing up to the level of the current sort of best super steels. It's a fairly stainless steel that holds an edge for a long time, and it's a very, very easy to get a very, very fine edge on it in my experience. The handle of the knife, it's G10. I know G10 is a type of plastic in itself, however it's a very different type of plastic to the nylon that the original one was made of. G10 has almost a softness or a sort of canvasy type feeling to it, and on this particular model here you can see they've gone to great lengths to make it a nice well contoured handle. You can see from the side when you open the knife here it's very much shaped to fit the palm of the hand, which it does very well. And then when you look at the knife from the side, they've even gone ahead and contoured it outwards here, making it for a very, very comfortable grip. The edge is round on the end, so the feeling in hand is comfortable when that is sitting in the palm of your hand. I have large sized hands. I wear large sized latex gloves when I need to wear latex gloves, and this knife is very, very comfortable for me. The handle has some jimping on the back of it, which is, it's an improvement for grip, and that paired with the thumb ramp on the back of the spine makes for a very good grip on the knife. There's jimping on the underside as well, and it's all in all probably one of the more comfortable everyday carry knives that I've handled. Fits my hand very well. The handles had some stylistic upgrades as well. The original Griptillian had a backspacer and generally had I often saw either black or dark green plastic handles. Other colours were available too, but they've gone the extra mile and they've layered the G10. So there's a separate little layer of G10 that is blue, and it is a separate layer. When I look at it under a microscope you can see the different grain pattern of the G10 or just the different texture of it, as if it was a separate piece of something. Some people were concerned it was just painted, but it is not. The blue aluminium backspaces match fairly well with the blue liner scales, and it makes for a really nice looking finish that makes the blade really pop, I think. Inside the handle there are full stainless steel liners, so the knife isn't ultra light. It isn't an ultra light knife. It's got a certain feeling of solidness to it, and I suppose if you were too bothered about it, you could probably take this knife apart and mill those handles out if you did want to save a little bit of weight. But I'm going to leave mine too because I'm not a size and weight Nazi particularly. The deep carry pocket clip that I've added is a very much an improvement on the Benchmade standard pocket clip. It's, as you can see, almost the top of the knife handle when I hold it like this, and has a generous amount of space to accompany most pocket seams. When I put this knife in my pocket, it is probably one of the easier to put in and the easier to get out, but it doesn't feel weak at any point. It feels like it's securely in there. They've just made this just right amount of tension, and because this is a thick space up here, like a wide space, there's enough room to accommodate any of the pocket seams, even keeping in mind these screws stick out a little bit. Really happy with the pocket clip, and it's a real improvement on the standard Benchmade pocket clip, which starts about here and just goes flat straight down. So you don't get much knife poking out of your pocket, which I really like. You can reverse it to the other side with another 2 screws. The knife gives you a lanyard hole there, which doesn't really have a great deal of material on this edge of the hole here. However, just a paracord lanyard, as long as you're not too reckless on it, I'm sure you won't be snapping that G10 and breaking it through. I don't use lanyards on folding pocket knives, but I understand some people do. The grind of the knife and the factory edge make for a really immediately good slicer straight out of the box. It's one of the finer edges I've had on a knife come from a factory. Really happy with the fine edge. One of the most enjoyable things about Benchmade knives is the axis lock. When you get this knife out of the box, at least in Australia, I found that, and I found the same with my 940, that the pivot screw has been tightened, perhaps a bit more, probably in line with the old knife flaws. Back a little while ago, our knife flaws weren't particularly happy with having knives that could do this. So the way the knife comes initially is it can't do that. So you'll pull back the switch, the knife will stay, and maybe gradually swing down. So a little Torx wrench, number 10 Torx, will get that nice little black pivot loose a bit, and then within no time you'll be able to shake, flick open, slide shut, do all the fun Benchmade stuff that you love doing with Benchmade pocket knives. And I find that even when you do loosen the pivot a bit, blade play is pretty much non-existent still. Just a bit of a balancing game. As you can see there, the blade's got a reasonable thickness. It's about 3mm thick, just under perhaps 2.8 or so, and it's coupled with that nice sort of 2/3 sabre grind. A really thin, good slicer on food, on cardboard, anything. The steel holds an edge really well. Story about the steel. I got this knife on the first day I had it. I went to my in-laws' house to help them take a piece of slate off a pallet, and I was cutting what I thought were plastic bindings that were holding this piece of slate to its pallet. Turned out it was steel, and I was cutting against it, and it took me probably about 5 complete back and forth cuts to realise this isn't happening. I was initially dismayed. I thought, well, there goes the edge of my knife. Took it back home, still shaving sharp. I put a slight roll on where I particularly leave against the material, and just buffing it with a strop, my wooden strop, fixed it right up. So far it's a very sharp, very workable steel, the CPM 20 CV. So the Benchmade 5561 new mini Griptillian, I think for the price you pay, which is $240, you get yourself a particularly good knife. $240 is a lot, I know. It's about $100 more than most other knives of this size that are well regarded will cost. It's a lot more than the Spyderco Delica, it's a lot more than the standard Griptillian, it's a lot more than the CRKT Swindle, it's a lot more than the Kershaw Skyline. However, the material upgrade is definitely worthwhile. The G10 handles make it a much more comfortable handle than the Delica or the original Griptillian, This G10 is nice. It's rough where it needs to be. It's smooth where it needs to be. The most comfortable handle I've had on a knife this size. The blade steel, probably market leading at the moment, so really, really happy with that. Definitely worth. I always like trying these high-end steels. Definitely worth giving this one a shot. Is it my favourite knife? It's not my favourite knife. My favourite knife is still the 940. I like the 940 purely because of how it looks, and I do like a slightly larger knife. However, I can't get past using my rational brain to declare this probably the best pure everyday carry knife that you can get right now. Benchmade 5561 Griptillian. Thanks for watching, dudes. I will see you later.